Mr. Speaker, I call upon the clerk of this honorable House to read the 216 Appropriations Bill 2015 first reading.
Bill to provide for the services of the government of Anguilla for the financial year ending the 31st day of December 2016. The 2016 Appropriations Bill 2015, second reading.
Mr. Speaker, I beg and move that a bill shortly entitled the 2016 Appropriations Bill 2015 be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, I beg your leave to use the podium in my presentation. Mr. Speaker, this is the first budget address that I have the privilege to present since the election of our Anguilla United Front team as the new government of Anguilla on April 22nd, 2015. I must therefore crave your indulgence while I employ this occasion to once again express our profound thanks and appreciation to the people of Anguilla for the overwhelming confidence they have reposed in us to lead our country forward out of the wilderness of prolonged recession, severe unemployment and loss of income, economic and financial instability, and fiscal uncertainty. Mr. Speaker, we do so with great humility in the face of the strong mandate that the people have given us. This is an awesome responsibility placed on our shoulders. With this in mind, and considering others, we find it fitting that the theme of this year's budget address be, and I quote, "We have to define the times and not allow the times to define us." Mr. Speaker, this AUF government is all in. We are highly motivated and committed and are steadfastly devoting whatever talents and abilities the Lord has blessed us with to undertake the people's work to the best of our ability. We pledge to relentlessly pursue and achieve a new period of stable and sustained growth, increased jobs and full employment, growing incomes and improved well-being and quality of life. We will create increased opportunities for all our people, especially our youth. And we will strengthen and expand the social safety net, especially in the area of healthcare. And we will improve and extend social development services, especially for the more vulnerable members of our community. Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that I have presented some 16 budgets over the years, this one is of particular significance to the progress and prosperity of Anguilla because we are dealing with extremely critical, once-in-a-lifetime and intergenerational challenges to the longer-term sustainability of our economy, our society, and Anguilla's ecosystem where we make our home. Foremost in this enterprise of returning the Anguillan community to progress and prosperity is the resolution, stabilization, and strengthening of our indigenous banking sector. Mr. Speaker, I am humble, indeed we all are humble, that we, the Anguilla United Front Party, have been chosen by the people of Anguilla to be charged with this awesome responsibility to ensure the survival, continuity and growth of the indigenous banking sector, and at the same time, ensure the safety and security of the hard-earned savings of the people of Anguilla. Mr. Speaker, this year has been a particularly trying one for all of us. It is the main objective as government to bring our island back on a strong path towards fiscal and economic stability. Such a path requires a focused approach because the indigenous banking sector has been and still is responsible for 75% or more of domestic banking industry and banking activity. Indeed, this sector is the foundation of the people of Anguilla's growth and participation in our national development. If this sector is struggling, it is obvious that the rest of the economy will likewise be adversely impacted. We recognize this very early and understand the need to take principled and well-researched and informed action after weighing various alternatives. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues have entrusted me as Minister of Finance to lead the way, namely, to define the scope of the issue, research, examine, and review the options, and propose a viable and affordable way forward that ensures that the customer's deposits are guaranteed. The sector retains much of its indigenous character. An improved and effective regulatory framework is put in place, and negative impacts on staff are minimized. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that we are now in a position to realize all of the above in keeping with page 12, section 3.4.1 of our Anguilla United Party manifesto, dealing with recovery and growth in commercial banking and finance. And I quote our Vision 2020 statement in this section, and it reads, "We envision the indigenous banks will be recovered, strengthened, and growing, meeting the needs of the people of Anguilla, and with the international banks facilitating a new period of robust economic growth," unquote. Mr. Speaker, we took the time to define these times and the way forward for a prosperous Anguilla in our manifesto. We aim to fulfill the goals and objectives we have set out therein over the next 5 years. But all of the above will not be sustainable unless the underlying economy is robust and capable of fulfilling the requirements for growth and success, namely increased jobs, business opportunities, investment, and training. These have been the core elements of our mantra upon seeking the support of the people of Anguilla in the last election. We do not intend to depart from these core imperatives. Mr. Speaker, after 7.5 months in office, and despite the many challenges, our optimism for achieving these goals over the medium term has not waned. Indeed, we continue to be encouraged by the patience, tolerance, and understanding of the vast majority of Anguillians who, in various ways and without fanfare, commend our efforts. This is indeed an indication that they understand that these are defining times and that we are bent on defining the times and not allow the times to define us. In keeping with our tradition of democratic succession, we took over the reins of government and a budget passed by our predecessors, the Anguilla United Movement Administration. On behalf of the people of Anguilla, we thank them for their service. Let me especially thank the Honorable Hubert B. Hughes for his long tenure and wish him Godspeed in his retirement. The baton of government has been passed on to us, and we intend to take full responsibility for doing what is necessary to ensure that all our people have an opportunity to share in the Anguillian dream. Mr. Speaker, even though the budget address is delivered by me as Minister of Finance, I intend to depart from the usual practice where I speak on submissions from every ministry. And on this occasion, I will do a very annotated walkthrough and allow the ministers responsible to elaborate on the details of the various programs in their portfolios when they make their presentations. I will stick mainly to the broader fiscal and economic presentations and the issues. Mr. Speaker, let's get started. The review of the economy 2014. Last year, our economy grew in real terms by a respectable 6.74%. This is significant for Anguilla because we have not seen such growth since the mid-2000s. Gross value added as a standard measure of economic output was EC $720.45 million. Although we are not yet back to our peak level of output, which was EC $815 million in 2008, we are seeing the requisite growth in our critical sectors that will allow us to surpass that peak through controlled, sustained growth. Mr. Speaker, permit me the opportunity to speak a bit more about sector developments in our budding economy. In the past year, the most significant economic sector in terms of their contribution to economic activity were hotels and restaurants, real estate, renting and business activities, financial intermediation, construction and public administration, defense and compulsory social security. Notably, Mr. Speaker, our economic mainstay, tourism, continues to drive growth and create jobs. This sector grew by 2.92% in 2014 and contributed EC $144.63 million to our economy in 2014. This expansion of tourism was a result of a 17% increase in visitor arrivals over 2013 and the EC $345.3282 million that our visitors expended on our shores. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, any promise of robust economic growth in a unique economy must be preceded by robust growth in the construction sector. This critical sector leads or booms and equally leads or slumps. It is therefore very propitious that in 2014, construction activity in Anguilla accelerated significantly with an expansion of 38.08%. This was as a result of Zemi Beach, the Reef, Manoa, Solia, and the range of other development, redevelopment expansion and construction projects that were in the works in 2014. Mr. Speaker, the construction sector was the primary driver of Anguilla's growth in 2014, as it did in the mid-2000s. And in order for our recovery to continue, we must ensure that construction activity continues to thrive in our island. Mr. Speaker, we cannot sit here in this honorable house speaking about sector growth in our economy in the abstract and not address the proverbial elephant in the room, that is the banking sector. Tight credit conditions and dwindling activity in this sector has been an impediment to the overall growth in Anguilla for 5 long years. Estimates produced jointly by our Department of Statistics and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank reveal that the banking subsector contributed 81.28 million EC dollars to the economy, representing a 0.91% decline in 2014. All Anguillians by now should be aware of the pressing need to resolve the troubled indigenous banks, National Bank of Anguilla and Caribbean Commercial Bank, and to move forward to a new dispensation. So at this time, Mr. Speaker, it only needs be said that we are anticipating the approval by the UK government of the bank resolution plans in short order, so that going forward, the banking sector will no longer stifle growth in our economy, but return to a position where it adds to our overall growth position rather than subtract from it. We expect 2015 to be another year of compounded growth for Anguilla, as real growth of 3.12% is anticipated this year, as our industries continue to find ways to increase output in steadily improving global, regional, and local economic climates. A fiscal review of the year 2015. Mr. Speaker, having reviewed the state of the economy, we will now discuss and focus on government's fiscal position for 2015 this year. This involves a review of recurrent revenue relative to recurrent expenditure, and combining this with capital revenue, capital expenditure, to give a picture of the government's overall fiscal balance in 2015. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the positive developments in our economy, government continues to operate within tight fiscal constraints. We continue to struggle with achieving and maintaining our commitment to the agreed prudential limits set out in the framework for fiscal sustainability and development, and to meet the development needs of our people and our island. It is anticipated that recurrent revenue for 2015 will total 195.22 million EC dollars, surpassing the budget estimate for this year of 192.29 million dollars. 2015 collections, if realized, will represent an increase of $10.01 million, or 5.4% over 2014, when EC $185.21 million was collected. This is proof, Mr. Speaker, of the economic turnaround that has begun and the relationship between the economy and government revenues. The major contributions to recurrent revenue remain unchanged from previous years. Import duty other continues to be the largest contributor, with collections projected to yield some EC $46.89 million in 2015, exceeding the original estimate of $42.03 million. When compared to 2014, collections increased by 11.24%. Mr. Speaker, the increase in consumption that supports the increase in duty collections is expected. When the economy is growing, that is the situation. And Mr. Speaker, accommodation tax, the second largest revenue item, is expected to come in within budget to a total of $18.99 million. This represents a 17.32% increase over 2014 collections of EC $16.11 million. A portion of the collections is attributed to the payment of arrears. Customs surcharge continues to perform in 2015, and projections indicate that collections will total $18.02 million EC dollars, compared to the budget estimates of $16.14 million. Import duty fuel and gas is projected to total $14.15 million, and the interim stabilization levy is projected to total $13.97 million. Mr. Speaker, recurrent expenditure is expected to total $185.54 million in 2015. This is a $6.64 million less than the budgeted estimate of $192.79 million, and $4.37 million more when compared to 2014. We have unlimited needs, Mr. Speaker, and while there are several areas we would like to see developed, to do so can be challenging. Some of these areas have been included in the budget. However, Mr. Speaker, we will want to be fiscally responsible and continue to employ expenditure controls, expending based on cash flow availability. The current balance, the difference between recurrent revenue and recurrent expenditure, is projected to be a surplus of $9.68 million. Capital expenditure for 2015. Mr. Speaker, capital expenditure for 2015 is expected to total $7.5 million. This represents a 38% increase of the $19.8 million that was budgeted. Mr. Speaker, while this is some improvement over recent years, it is nowhere near where it should be or where we would want it to be in order to support the needs of our recovering and growing economy. This year saw limited but sometimes important accomplishments with the completion of the first phase of the redevelopment of the Adrian T. Hazel Primary School and additional minor education projects financed by the remaining UK grant funds. Additionally, the completion of the Amerindian Heritage Center project is another string in the bow of our constantly improving tourism product and is anticipated to open in the first quarter of 2016, offering visitors an insight into Anguilla's past. The tax reform agenda was also at the forefront with the ongoing implementation of property tax reform consultancy. The formation of a broader-based tax regime is a goal that is essential for Anguilla's sustainable development and will afford us better schools, better roads, better healthcare, essential services that are all fundamental for us all. With regards to capital grants, Mr. Speaker, in 2015, capital grants total $3.726 million EC from the UK government in support of the implementation of the Adrian T. Hazel School Development Fund, development and other minor education projects. The capital balance totaled $3.7 million, and capital expenditure is expected to total $7.5 million. This translates in a deficit of $3.8 million. This was financed from the Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, a payout received in November of 2014, and drawdowns from the Caribbean Development Bank loan in support of the development of the Anguilla Community College, and the balance of proceeds from the third and final tranche of the EDF 10 grant funds also received in November 2014. So the overall balance, Mr. Speaker, and government's overall fiscal position is determined by the sum of the recurrent balance and the capital balance plus grant receipts. The recurrent balance for 2015 is expected to be a surplus of $9.68 million. The capital account balance is expected to be a deficit of $3.8 million. Taken together, the combined balances translate into a surplus of $5.88 million. However, Mr. Speaker, once the debt amortization figures are factored in, an overall deficit of $2.8 million is projected. This will be financed in the main by drawing down on government's overdraft facilities. Public debt. At the end of 2014, disbursed outstanding public sector debt stood at $221.88 million, or 23.66% of gross domestic product. This represented a decline of 4.21% relative to the 2013 debt stock, which was at the time $231.65 million. Central government debt accounted for 94.25%, or $209.14 million. and the debt stock, while the remaining 5.75% or 12.75 million was due to government guarantees. Approximately 9% of the portfolio was held in short-term instruments. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, the government of Anguilla is required to maintain public debt within UK government borrowing limits. At the end of 2014, government was compliant with the debt service to recurrent revenue target of a maximum of 10%, having achieved a ratio of 8.84%. The net debt to recurrent revenue ratio was breached, and the stipulated target of 80% was breached by 17.9%. And the liquid assets to recurrent expenditure ratio was 8.07% less than the 25% benchmark, minimum benchmark that is set. In 2015, no new long-term debt was acquired as of the 30th of November 2015. Public sector debt stood at EC 211.06 or 24.3% of gross domestic product. This represented a reduction by 4.88 percentage points over the 2014 stock of debt. My government, Mr. Speaker, pledges our commitment to prudently manage Anguilla's debt portfolio as we face the challenges confronting us at this critical juncture. Recurrent expenditure for 2016. Mr. Speaker, the 2016 estimates of revenue and expenditure provide for total expenditure, including principal payments, of $225,335,227. Therefore, the recurrent expenditure without amortization for the fiscal year 2016 is estimated at $202.3 million, which is a 5.3% increase over the $192.1 million for fiscal year 2015. There are varying degrees across the various budget economic classifications for 2015 budget when compared to 2015. Salaries and wages will increase from $86.8 million to $87.2 million. This minor 0.4% increase is mainly attributed to the filling and regularization of positions in critical areas such as education, social services, and others. Retiring benefits moved from 10 million EC dollars to 10.3 million, reaching as a result and resulting in a 3.1% to facilitate the additional retirees in 2015. Interest payments increased from $9.3 million to $15.6 million, which is the largest increase of 67.3%. This spike in interest payments is essentially to deal with resolving our banking crisis. Goods and services increased from 43.3% to 45.2 million. And the 4.4% increase is basically attributed to training, maintenance services, utilities, insurance, and supplies and materials. Lastly, current transfers, which includes payments to our statutory bodies, increased from 42.6 million to 44.0 million. This 3.2% increase is primarily due to public assistance, health services, community and youth initiatives, and sports. Mr. Speaker, we'll now take some time to outline in some detail the expenditure allotment by ministry and department, as well as the ongoing and new initiatives of our ministries for the year 2016. The Governor's Ministries and Departments. The 2016 recurrent estimate for the Governor's Office and departments is $28.842 million. Mr. Speaker, this is a very minuscule decrease over the 2015 approved estimate of $28.849 million. With regards to police, generally, the public would like more visibility, more police stations, and an officer in every district. However, realistically, with the resources available, these ambitions are not easily achievable. The Royal Anguilla Police Force must therefore police according to the threat and risk the public faces and modernize its approach so that where people are living in areas where there have been crimes or the public has expressed vulnerability, then they can see an increased presence. Patrolling is important, but the Royal Anguilla Police Force must seek other ways of working in partnership to improve crime reduction measures, such as with CCTV pilots, smarter use of special constabulary, and having some shared space at the extremities of Anguilla so that patrols are not always drawn back to the valley. The Royal Anguilla Police Force will strengthen community policing, which will see officers assigned to a district under the leadership of a sergeant. This will allow this team to forge the relationships with the local community through street-level briefings and meetings so that they can consider and address the problems and issues they may be facing. Mr. Speaker, the Royal Anguilla Police Force will induce an independent advisory group drawn from across the communities who meet with the senior police officers on a regular basis to consider the impact of policing on our communities, offer advice on tactics and methods that are being employed by the police, and advise on managing community impacts of high profile or critical incidents. While recognizing the excellent work by PAVE and DARE, two social sector programs in diversion and education, as preventative measures in crime reduction, the Royal Anguilla Police Force acknowledges that there is a gap which needs to be bridged in managing high-risk offenders or suspects and victims in Anguilla. It therefore requires multi-agency public protection arrangements to be forged with partners to ensure Anguilla remains safe. Mr. Speaker, the Royal Anguilla Police Force, under the leadership of the new commissioner, is committed to developing the officers. Officers will be supported in reaching and maintaining good standards and to make officers accountable at all levels. Additionally, a police plan will be formulated and published during the course of the year. Public administration. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, the Department of Public Administration implemented a number of initiatives. These included the implementation of a service-wide formal recognition program to recognize significant accomplishments by employees. Public administration has also been working with the Department with the IT department to implement a system called Common Office, which will automate a number of human resource services offered, reduce the overall reliance that presently exists on paper, integrate the revised performance management system, and improve efficiency at both administrative and operational levels. Although overseas training was suspended, except for critical areas, such as education and health, some in-house training sessions were conducted this year, and the government continues to provide support for students pursuing studies online. The House of Assembly. A number of programs are being considered for 2016 in an effort to build the capacity of the House of Assembly to make it more capable and efficient. To achieve these objectives during 2016, the House of Assembly will, 1, identify an appropriate governance and administrative model for the House of Assembly. 2, develop a House of Assembly strategic plan for the period 2017 to 2020. Begin an annual training program training needs program, an assessment for the House staff, and develop a corresponding program, a training program that utilizes local and international networks and institutions, as well as increase cost effectiveness and efficiency of the House administration through the use of ICT into the House strategy for 2017 to 2020. In the Judicial Department in 2016, the most urgent initiative of that department will be to have the birth, death, and marriage records of Angola computerized. This will enable us to greatly improve the delivery of this service and preserve those records. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Home Affairs and its departments. Mr. Speaker, you will see that the overall budget for this particular ministry is reduced. The Ministry of Home Affairs has seen the transfer out of 4 of its departments to other ministries. Specifically, Physical Planning and Lands and Surveys Department are now a part of the Ministry of Finance, and the Agriculture Department and Fisheries and Marine Sources are now a part of the Ministry of Infrastructure. This transfer has left the Ministry of Home Affairs with an overall budget of $7.3 million, and which is a $5.3 million decrease over the approved budget for 2015. Some highlights of the department within the Ministry of Home Affairs include the following programs. In the Department of Environment, key initiatives continued in 2016 will include completion of the Anguilla National Ecosystem Assistant Project towards a green economy, governance for land use and planning, seed conservation work, development of a national and soil map, and a reconnaissance geological map. As well, the ongoing coordination of the sargassum seaweed cleanup and maintenance is also a part of this department's mandate. Majority of gender affairs, a priority for gender affairs in 2016 will be to continue the development of the gender unit and the unit's signature programs, Women's and Men's Week, and the 16 days of activism activities will continue to expand. In the Department of Labor, as part of the 2016 agenda, work towards a labor code that addresses the actual and potential needs of the labor force in Angola will continue. Concomitantly will be the issue of a minimum wage and its relevance to the island. While these goals are significant mandates, the department will continue through its work as legislated by law to ensure that fairness and consistency are always administered. The Department of Immigration in 2015 will continue to provide staff deployment through training to improve the efficiency of services. The implementation of the regional clearance system, Sail Clear, at the Marine base will allow both immigration and customs to have advanced knowledge of passengers, crew, and vessels before their arrival. This improved technology will help to manage the movement of persons in and out of Angola, thus ensuring that security remains paramount. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Home Affairs will elaborate on those annotated points that I just raised. Mr. Speaker, in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, Investment, Commerce, Tourism, and the other departments, the recurrent estimate for that ministry and its departments is $72.6 million, up from $62.3 million in 2015. This is a 16.5% increase over a 16.5% increase over 2015, bearing in mind that physical planning and lands and survey departments are now under this ministry. These two departments account for an increase of $2.4 million in the ministry's overall budget. Mr. Speaker, in terms of expenditure related to the finance division of the ministry, I will focus on the costs associated with the proposed bank resolution plan. There has been much discussion in Anguilla in recent weeks about the cost that government of Anguilla will have to incur to facilitate the resolution of the National Bank of Anguilla and the Caribbean Commercial Bank. I can state that the proposed borrowing in the resolution plan submitted to the United Kingdom government for approval is $302 million to be amortized over a period of 25 years. The majority of the proposed borrowing would be in the form of a $217 million 25-year bond at 3% interest rate to guarantee the deposits of the Anguilla Social Security Fund, which are on deposit at NBA and CCCB. Mr. Speaker, Part 1, Section 14 of the Anguilla Social Security Board Act states that any shortfall in the Social Security Fund would have to be made good by drawing down on the consolidated fund. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, Government of Anguilla has no alternative but to protect Social Security deposits 100% as part of the bank resolution plan, so as to avoid a shortfall in the Social Security Fund. Other borrowing associated with the bank resolution includes $45 million EC dollars, a 15-year loan at an average 3.4% interest rate from the Caribbean Development Bank to recapitalize the new bridge bank and to be formed, which is to be formed of the good bits of National Bank of Angola and Caribbean Commercial Bank. The remaining amount of borrowing associated with the bank resolution plan is to be a 10-year, $40 million bond at 2% to guarantee deposits other than Social Security deposits. Mr. Speaker, I trust that this puts to rest the often sensational speculation surrounding the proposed borrowing to facilitate the resolution of NBA and CCB. Protection of deposits is paramount to preserving the savings of the people of Anguilla, businesses, and public bodies, which is the wealth of the nation and the key to financial, economic, and social stability of Anguilla. Mr. Speaker, it trumps everything. Mr. Speaker, total debt service for 2016 is estimated to amount to $38.57 million. Of this amount, interest payments account for $15.59 million, while amortization amounts to $22.98 million. The debt service associated with the proposed new borrowing for banking resolution in 2016 is estimated at approximately $8.0 million in interest payments and $4.0 million in principal payment. Principal repayments on the policy-based loan obtained from the Caribbean Development Bank in 2010, for which the grace period expired on October 2015, is estimated at $12.37 million. It should be noted that as per accounting conventions, interest payments are included in the annual recurrent expenditure estimates, while principal payments, that is debt amortization, are made below the line. However, for the sake of transparency, I am reporting on the total debt obligations of the government of Angola for 2016, which is an improvement in the way budgets have been prepared in the past. Provision has been made in the budget to meet all government of Angola debt obligations for 2016. Economic development, investment, commerce, and tourism. Mr. Speaker, foreign direct investment will continue to figure highly into the national development agenda in 2016. While the construction phases of some projects will slow in 2016. For example, Zemi Beach, Manor, and the hotel component of the Reef by Cuisinart Golf Resort. Other projects are being negotiated to continue to boost the construction sector, and these include 2 projects in West End and Mays Bay, respectively by Sunset Homes, the commencement of construction for condominium villa developments and estate homes at the Cuisinart Golf Resort. Frangipani Resort will be constructing 40 to 50 rooms by the end of next year. A marina project at Altamar to commence construction next year. Sea Blue expansion project anticipated to begin construction in 2016, and Cap Toluca renovation project to commence in 2016. While these projects are significant investment in themselves, totaling over $100 million in the short term, the government continues to negotiate other MOUs with the anticipation that they will also come up and come on stream next year and beyond. To facilitate the process, the ministry is streamlining the MOU investment approval processes. The government is also considering the implementation of an economic residency program that is appropriate for Anguilla. This has the potential to not only improve the investment climate directly, but generate significant revenues for our national development. As regards tourism for 2016, Mr. Speaker, the government of Anguilla is committed to increasing the island's market presence in traditional markets like North America and Europe, but also intends to place considerable emphasis in the development of new source markets in South America and Asia. To this end, the revitalized and creative tourist board has already begun to implement new strategies which will continue into next year, geared at increasing visitor arrivals. The people of Anguilla articulated a vision of Anguilla's tourism by the year 2020, which is entrenched in the Sustainable Tourism Master Plan. The vision calls for Anguilla to become a premier Caribbean destination, known for our world-class beaches, pristine azure waters, top-class resorts and restaurants, relaxed ambiance, sense of place, peace, and tranquility in a safe setting among friendly and hospitable people that take pride in their identity, cultural heritage, and environment, unquote. Recognizing that achieving this goal will require sustained and strategic planning and careful execution, the ministry has identified the following priorities as stipulated in the master plan for action in 2016, and will continue to collaborate with key stakeholders across the island in the following years, including revising the original tourism policy, improve the regulatory and legislative framework for registration, licensing and certification of tourism enterprises, creating a more diversified tourism product, and improving standards through training. The government recognizes the challenges of air and sea access to Anguilla, which impact the efficiency of tourists and nationals traveling to and from Anguilla, and commerce in general. Next year, government will be using a mix of initiatives to encourage local and international carriers to use the Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport as a means of increasing intra-regional and international traffic, including providing incentives for local carriers to ply routes that are important. The government will also be conducting the necessary negotiations and background work with developers and local landowners for the extension and further development of the airport. Mr. Speaker, Anguilla cannot rebound to the economic prosperity if access to the island is not efficient, and improving this sector is one sure way of improving our levels of commerce and investment. As the theme says, we have to define the times and not allow the times to define us. The Department of Lands and Survey. Mr. Speaker, it continues to work in collaboration with various government agencies and the OECS on Global Climate Change Alliance project, which focuses and climate change adaptation and sustainable land management in the Eastern Caribbean. As well, the department is also pursuing to establish the island's first GPS system. And so, Mr. Speaker, in the coming year, the department will be reviewing, improving, and developing land policies to improve island land management practices, recognizing that land is of vital importance and must be managed in a sustainable way. The Department of Physical Planning. The overall goal of the Planning Department for 2016 will continue to be the promotion of sustainable development of Anguilla's economy through the facilitation of wise planning and building practices, the development of suitable planning systems, and the creation of orderly development plans. The department endeavors to effectively manage the planning and building process through proper legislation and a one-stop platform, revise the building code, expand its GIS system, broaden its public awareness program, and conduct a national electric code training course with all electricians on the island. Mr. Speaker, in the Department of Statistics, it is hoped that during the year ahead, the importance of a strong statistical system would be recognized, and efforts made by all stakeholders to assist the Anguilla Statistics Department through their participation, whether it be ministries, departments, and agencies returning the standard data in a timely manner, stakeholders attending workshops, businesses and households returning data requested by the department, or as simply as encouraging your neighborhood or your neighbor to comply with requests by the department for data. Mr. Speaker, our financial services sector is one of Anguilla's strengths. In view of the critical use of the financial services sector in creating a conducive business environment for the diversification and growth, government remains committed to the financial services sector and the commercial registry alike. All economic growth and those initiatives have to be intensified. The commercial registry will consider the feasibility of establishing a private jet register, a non-commercial private yacht register, and a business name register, diversifying its portfolio in this way. Government will introduce a special financial sector incentive scheme to attract international investors and high net worth individuals to relocate their front office operations to the shores of Anguilla. The Anguilla Finance Promotion Agency will be re-energized for more effective promotion campaigns, especially to diversify our global business activities. And the Financial Services Institute, offering short courses and certification, is being set up in collaboration with the Anguilla Community College to provide specialized training that is focused on the actual needs of the industry. Mr. Speaker, as we embrace change to make the future work for our children, let us remember that if we do nothing, what is now a precarious but rectifiable situation could dissipate into a severe crisis and become unmanageable. Economic adjustment will then be forced upon us from outside, and the conditionality of foreign assistance will surely be undesirable for the Anguilla population. This, Mr. Speaker, would be difficult to endure. Let me reiterate, don't let the time define us. We must define the times. The Ministry of Social Development has a 2016 recurrent budget of $76.8 million, an increase of 3.9% over the 2015 approved budget of $73.9 million. This increase is due to the social initiatives that the ministry plans to introduce or continue in 2016. These include, but are not limited to, the following. In education, the Ministry of Education continues to strive to provide quality education services to highly motivated and qualified educators. With a new education development plan for 2015 to 2020, emphasis will be placed in 2016 on the completion and implementation of a technical and vocational and education training unit framework to strengthen the development of our human capital and the availability of technical skills on Anguilla. 2016, we'll also see a move towards enhanced physical and socio-economic accessibility to education services. This will be seen in the move towards the improvement of science, technology, engineering, and math facilities in efforts to support the early childhood sector and a look at what the future holds for comprehensive secondary education with the development of a master plan for the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School in the years ahead. In sports, Mr. Speaker, the Department of Sports will, in 2016, focus on developing programs in the communities and gathering with national sports organizations to strengthen their programs and enhance the performance of national teams. Additionally, some of the department's initiatives will include a structured coaching program implemented in primary schools in an effort to build a strong foundation in the acquisition of sports skills at that level. Interdepartmental sports activities will be held monthly for government departments in an effort to encourage a healthier lifestyle and more social interaction among public servants. Work will continue at the Stonegong playing field, the 400-meter athletic track located in Carl's Pond, the Owen Mussington Sports Field, and at the James Ronald Webster Park, since there has been an expression of interest to bring back regional cricket to Anguilla. Youth and culture. The Department of Youth and Culture, its efforts to reduce youth unemployment and improve youth employability. These will be intensified in 2016, building on the gains of the last 2 years in the Job Link Up, the Youth Exposure Program, and the Get Set Entrepreneurial Program in 2016. The department will be working in collaboration with the West End and the Valley communities, and we'll see 2 additional centers become operational, offering education and community support services. There will be an after-school arts development program implemented in 2016 to positively expose primary level students in the performing arts. A 2-year project will be launched in 2016 to revise the 1990 textbook titled Anguilla or Ireland. Responsibility for the development and promotion of Anguilla's national sports boat racing will be transferred to the Ministry of Youth and Culture commencing in January 2016. The Anguilla Community College. Mr. Speaker, the overarching priority for the Anguilla Community College in 2016 is the construction of its new purpose-built facility at the Long Path site. Efforts are in place to strengthen the human resource capacity and operational procedures at the institution. The community college will also strengthen its TVET offerings, become a business and technology education council center, and the Center of Excellence in Oenology and Mixology in the Caribbean, and a transition to the Caribbean Tourism Learning Center. The Ministry of Health and Social Development. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the other parts of the portfolio, the Ministry of Health and Social Development continues work towards the vision that all residents of Anguilla will enjoy a high standard of living and universal access to quality social services. As it continues to perform the steering and governance role, the Ministry of Health achieved a number of accomplishments, including they finalized and secured the approval of the National Health Policy and Strategic Plan for 2015-2025, established the Chronic Disease Unit with responsibility for non-communicable diseases, as well as the HIV, AIDS, and sexual reproductive health. and re-engage the National Chronic Disease Commission. The Department of Health Protection is in the process of amending its food safety legislation to address specific food safety standards, and significant strides continue to be made in strengthening the department's laboratory capacity to audit food, and the department continues to offer a free bulky waste removal service to reduce the proliferation of vectors. This year, the passing of two important pieces of legislation for the Ministry of Health and Social Development, namely the Social Protection Act, establishes a formalized social benefit system to qualified persons in Anguilla. It seeks to ensure that resources are properly allocated so that all who qualify can receive the assistance they need. Violence and injury have significant social and economic costs, and the passage of the Domestic Violence Act provides a greater protection for victims of domestic violence and makes provision for the granting of protection ordinance. Additionally, the Ministry of Social Development formalized the Interagency Child Protection Protocol with an official protocol signing agreement. The protocols guide all agencies responsible for safeguarding children on working collectively to respond to child abuse and neglect. The follow-up to the Break the Silence campaign funded by UNICEF, DFID, and UK Aid offered support in 2015 to execute activities focusing on anti-bullying, sexual abuse, domestic violence, corporal punishment, and child-friendly schools. Mr. Speaker, August saw the opening of a place of safety managed by the Department of Social Development. This residential care facility caters to children whose needs cannot be properly met in the homes or the foster care system, and whose behavior do not warrant them being placed in the Zenada Haven, the Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. This has created a strain on the department's budget, but has provided another opportunity to help our children regain their lives. Finally, on note, Mr. Speaker, this year, the Department of Probation observed 10 years in operation, and in 2016, the Ministry of Health and Social Development and the departments under its remit will continue efforts to develop and preserve Anguilla's social landscape. The Minister of Social Development will do further elaboration when he makes his presentation. The Ministry of Infrastructure, Communication, Utilities, Housing, Agriculture, Fisheries, and Departments. Mr. Speaker, the 2016 recurrent budget for the Ministry of Infrastructure is 16.7 million, up from the 2015 budget of 14.4 million. The transfer of Agriculture Department and Fisheries and Marine Resources accounts for the 2.3 million of the ministry's overall budget. The focus is on operationalizing programs to achieve the 2015 to 2020 strategic objectives of the Anguilla United Front government. The Department of Agriculture and the Department of Fisheries and Marine Resources. The departments were transferred to the portfolio of MICRO during 2015, and significant attention is directed on the sustainable economic development and employment opportunities which could be derived from Anguillians while safeguarding and protecting the environment for future generations. The focus is the operationalization of a national agriculture policy and collaboration with the National Farmers Association and other government and non-governmental stakeholders so as to promote and increase the production of vegetables, fruits, and livestock on the island, both in backyard and commercial ventures, and to create a regulated environment for the use of hazardous agricultural chemicals. The Department of Fisheries will continue to play its role in improving the sustainable use of Anguilla's fishing and marine resources while advancing the economic and financial opportunities in Anguilla's exclusive economic zone. Anguilla Fire and Rescue Service. The Anguilla Fire and Rescue Service will continue to focus on its core functions of aerodrome rescue and firefighting domestic land search and rescue firefighting, and protecting life and property, while developing its institutional capacity in the area of fire safety, prevention and precaution, and nearshore maritime rescue and firefighting. Training and the construction of new facilities will continue along with work on the operationalization of the fire precaution and safety systems for public buildings. Similarly, the Marine Unit will be strengthened so as to accelerate Anguilla's preparedness and compliance with international standards and requirements. In the energy sector, Mr. Speaker, energy and climate change are inextricably linked, and this government is now in a position to really advance our strategic objectives in this area during the course of 2016, so as to bring a real energy transformation into being. The Anguilla National Energy Committee will be re-established to coordinate the various international and regional initiatives, and ANGLIC will be a true partner in the new energy dispensation. The Public Utilities Commission will be the regulator for the electricity sector. One of the short-term goals of this government was to ensure that the public water supply meets the needs of the Anguillan public. This has been achieved in a relatively short time. The second part of our objective for the water sector is to ensure that the operations of the Water Corporation are financially viable, economically sustainable, and conducted to international corporate governance standards. In fact, my crew and the Ministry of Finance are partnering in the development of a corporate governance framework for the statutory bodies of the government of Anguilla. Mr. Speaker, the government of Anguilla will push for the modernization of the government of Anguilla through digital government, and this will entail, at the national level, the implementation of an e-commerce legislation and the continued advancement of the telecommunication and broadcasting capacity to develop world standards. The Department of Information Technology and E-Government Services will continue with the modernization of the government's network and also exploring a strategy to maximize the sharing of data and the information across government departments and ministries. Mr. Speaker, the government of Anguilla, through the Anguilla Air and Seaports Authority and the Anguilla Tourist Board, have been making progress with the reintroduction of the night ferry, and they are actively engaged in expanding air access opportunities for Anguilla. The government of Anguilla will take advantage of the offer from the UK government to assist with the technical aspects of the development of the airport, and the repair of the road jetty remains paramount for 2016. The road section continues to focus on road safety by highlighting a number of sections online marking of the primary road network, routine and periodic and road maintenance activities were also executed throughout the year and continue on a number of swift finance projects that resulted from impacts due to the passage of Hurricane Gonzalo. A project to put in place a critical road access linkage to the Sandaground village from Back Street commenced with the initial clearing of the route. The pre-construction phase, including the detailed designs and land acquisition, is presently ongoing. Buildings. Technical assistance has been provided throughout the year to various procurement authorities, departments and ministries in the implementation of a number of building projects. The post of facilities manager was filled in September of this year, and as a result, my crew will be better able to address the unsystematic nature of building and facilities maintenance of the government of Anguilla. Vehicles. The government's fleet of vehicles continues to deplete and deteriorate as a result of age and poor conditions of the vehicles. There is an urgent need to implement the recommendation of the vehicle replacement strategy that form part of the vehicle usage policy. The proposed acquisition of additional fit-for-purpose vehicles will enable government and government departments to execute their programs in a more efficient and effective manner. Mr. Speaker, in sum, I now restate the recurrent expenditure for 2016 is budgeted at $202.3 million, and I now turn my attention over to recurrent revenue. Mr. Speaker, the recurrent revenue estimates for 2016 is $219.87 million, which represents a 12.6% increase over the 2015 estimates of $195.15 million. This projection, based on a combination of new tax measures, a more robust approach to collections, and a modest economic growth expectation of 3 to 5%. The new tax measures and adjustments for 2015 are as follows. 1, increase in ANGLEC license by 150% to $750 EC per year. Implement ANGLEC gross revenue tax of 0.65%, which will yield $520,000. Implement a petroleum license for bulk importers, which will yield $1.5 million EC. Implement a petroleum gross revenue tax of 0.85%, which will yield EC $760,000. Increase in land registry fees by 100%, which will yield $568,000. Increase in driver license fees by 25%, which will yield $2.4 million. Increase in vehicle license by 25%, which will yield $8.8 million. Increase in cruise permits by 50%, which will yield $1.2 million. Increase of the marketing levy from $1 to $3 per night per person, which will yield a total of $3.5 million. Implementation of a training levy at 10% of the work permit fee, which will yield $486,000. An increased communication levy from 10 to 15%, which will yield in total $5.09 million. In addition to the tax measures mentioned above, the yield from the property tax is expected to improve significantly based on the updated property tax register. Mr. Speaker, the following presents a summary of revenue composition in 2016. 30.7% of total revenue is projected to come from duties and is estimated to be $67.57 million. Another significant contributor to revenue is taxes on domestic goods and services, which accounts for some 24.58% of revenue, or $54.04 million. Of that total, Mr. Speaker, accommodation tax accounts for $21.3 million, and stamp duty, $12 million. The interim stabilization levy will remain in its current form and is expected to yield some $13.9 million. Tax on property is estimated at $10.07 million, which represents a modest 4.58% of recurrent revenues. Taxes on international trade and transactions continue to be a major source of revenue, and in 2016, anticipated collections are $20.4 million, or 9.3% of recurrent revenues. Non-tax revenues account for some $33.2 million, or 15.11% of revenue, of which fees, fines, and permits account for $23.67 million. Mr. Speaker, again, there has been much speculation in recent weeks about the measures which will form the 2016 revenue budget. The speculation can now come to an end. With all the challenges facing Anguilla, the need to refinance the resolution of the National Bank of Anguilla and Caribbean Commercial Bank, the need to finance our recurrent expenditure needs, those needs in health, education, and other areas of social development, the need to finance investment in our social and economic infrastructure like schools, health and sports facilities, ports and roads. We have a choice to make. We either define the times or we allow the times to define us. I would suggest that the former is the better choice to make. It involves sacrifices to be made, but in the long term, we as a people will be the better off for it. Indeed, real leadership often involves taking decisions which, while they may not be popular, they are for the greater good. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of studies over the years which have pointed to the need for Anguilla to have a diversified and streamlined tax base. These include the Oxford Policy Management's Revenue Study of 2010 and the Gandhi-Wickens Study of 2011. This Anguilla United Fund Administration has decided to step up to the plate and tackle the long overdue need for comprehensive fiscal reform. Our initiative in property tax reform in 2016 is just the start of the process. In 2016, we will transition the interim stabilization levy into a social development levy to fund a national health fund system and intervention in education. With the introduction of the National Health Fund, the finances of the health system will be put on a sustainable basis, and Anguillians can begin to enjoy a high-quality standard of medical care. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, we also plan to introduce a broad-based goods and services tax in conjunction with a reform of the customs duty system to have a low average rate of customs duty. This should help to increase the number of startups of small and medium enterprises and the expansion of existing businesses. The strategic objective, Mr. Speaker, is to provide a better environment in which businesses can flourish, thereby and therefore creating employment, which in turn increases aggregate demand and government revenue, and therefore enables government to provide the goods and services demanded by the populace in education, health, sanitation, policing, etc. That is, to create a virtuous cycle. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the measures mentioned above, over the medium term, this administration intends to implement a number of initiatives which will generate significant revenues to drive the transformation of the Anguillan economy. As mentioned earlier, these will include a fisheries licensing regime to harness the resources present in Anguilla's extended fisheries zone, a permanent resident for investment regime, and an aircraft and ship registry. With the revenues to be derived from these initiatives, it is the intention to reduce and or eliminate some of the stopgap and ad hoc measures which have been introduced over the years. For example, the customs surcharge, which was increased by the previous administration to 6%. To reiterate, the strategic objective is to have in place a diversified and streamlined tax system that is business-friendly and socially equitable, and will position Anguilla as the #1 place in the Caribbean to do business and for persons to reside. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we have to define the times and not allow the times to define us. We have to end this cycle of stop, go development, which has been the characteristic of Anguilla's progress since separation from the state of St. Nevis, Anguilla in 1980. Indeed, with the 50th anniversary of the Anguilla Revolution around the corner, if we are to be true to the legacy of the heroes and heroines of the revolution, we have to end this period of arrested development and unleash the potential of Anguilla so that current and future generations can live strong, proud, and free. Mr. Speaker, the proposed capital budget for 2016 is $26.547 million, and the anticipated source of funds include the remainder of the UK grant funds that will finance the telecommunication tower replacement and the fire station and air traffic control tower development, and the remaining loan and grant from the Caribbean Development Bank for the ongoing development of the Anguilla Community College. The balance of the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Fund, CRIF, will continue to finance recovery and mitigation projects such as the operationalization of the National Emergency Operations Center and ensuring that existing backup power and communication systems are reliable and in usable condition. Provision has been made to support the most crucial equipment needs of the Health Authority of Anguilla. And every effort is made to supplement this with requests to various corporate agencies for grant support. Mr. Speaker, having heard the most recent statistics on the prevalence of CNCDs in our island, it is quite alarming, and all efforts must be made to support our people's own individual efforts to live and promote a healthy lifestyle in a bid to arrest this trend. The Pan American Health Organization have committed to providing counterpart financing to support the important implementation of a STEPS survey that measures the main risk factors that cause chronic non-communicable diseases. This will enable development of better targeted programs and interventions to address chronic non-communicable diseases. The remaining projects in the 2016 capital budget are a mix that focuses on redevelopment, development and replacement of government assets, fisheries development, efficient energy practices, further developing of our tourism product, and an evidence-based vision and plan for our country. Two projects worthy of specific mention are the continued development of the Valley Primary School and the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School master planning and development advancement of the education sector, and the development advancement of the education sector continues to be given a high priority as seen by the EDF 11 program scheduled to support the implementation of Anguilla's Education Development Plan 2015 to 2020. Approximately 41 million or 14 million euros has been allocated to Anguilla for the 11th European Development Fund period of 2015 to 2020. It is anticipated that these funds will finance the remaining projects in the 2016 capital budget. Mr. Speaker, fiscal prudence continues in the face of ongoing financial challenges, which often mean a combination of restrictions on spending and phased project implementation. However, this approach must be mirrored with the reality that there are vital areas of development that must be addressed. Some projects that have been implemented, some projects have to be implemented. A case in point is the rehabilitation of the Road Bay Jetty, which has become one of the most crucial projects in our capital budget. Mr. Speaker, capital investment is imperative, and the need to economize cannot continue to be at the expense of our health, our education, our safety, and our progress as a nation. Mr. Speaker, as always, we extend our gratitude to all our development partners and look forward to a continued dynamic and fruitful working relationship. Capital revenue. Mr. Speaker, capital revenue for 2016 is estimated at $32.2 million and comprises the following. Approximately $12 million from the EDF funds are anticipated for disbursement in 2016, and these funds will finance projects in the 2016 capital to the amount of $8.4 million. A grant request from the UK of $4 million to finance the rehabilitation of Roadway Jetty is pending. The sale of Anglex shares is expected to net some $16.2 million. The intention is to use these funds to make an initial contribution to a sinking fund, which will be created to meet and repay the debt that will be incurred to resolve the two troubled banks. Mr. Speaker, the staff in the Ministry of Finance, as well as the permanent secretaries and heads of departments in the various ministries, worked extremely hard during the preparation of the annual budgetary estimates. So let me now take the opportunity to commend them for the brilliant job they are doing with us as with past administrations. And let me state openly and candidly that we will not throw you under the bus simply to avoid the blame for taking decisive action. Yours is an exercise that begins in late July and August, as it's continually revised, updated, and tweaked up until this very important day. The term estimates is definitive. It is not an exact science to begin with. And moreover, the process is further subjected to the vagaries of the international environment. This is so especially in small states with open and vulnerable economies like Angola. We must therefore be continually redefining ourselves and adjusting our strategies to manage the conditions and the circumstances that we face. These conditions and circumstances, Mr. Speaker, are seldom ever of our making. Whether it is the global recession, the rising cost of energy, climate change, terrorism, harmful tax initiatives, sea level rising, or global warming. What remains constant is that nothing comes without a cost. And very often, we have to make sacrifices for the damage done by others. Many of these issues we are faced with today require that they be managed in an atmosphere of calm and responsibility. Any other approach will not be helpful to the cause of effective resolution. Over the last weeks, Mr. Speaker, many of our detractors have been telling the people of Angola what they don't want and why they should protest. However, we are not hearing any reasoned solutions being put forward on how to deal with the challenges itself or how they will be financed. All we hear about are scare tactics and calls for civil disobedience, as if this is their approach to good governance. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the last 5 years did not offer a viable response to fixing the underlying economy on a sustainable basis. There can be no viable adjustment program that does not provide for some form of investment in the public and private sectors to stimulate and sustain growth, restore employment and incomes, etc. Simply balancing the budget can be a cosmetic exercise when it comes to national development. The government's balance sheet may look handsome, but the wider economy will not show any positive efforts, or positive effects for an extended period of time without a robust growth strategy, in addition to a fiscal rebalancing and stabilization strategy. Our government, Mr. Speaker, has pledged to fix our indigenous banking industry, maintain fiscal stability and budgetary balance, and at the same time, aggressively promote and pursue the revival of the economy and the return to robust and steady growth, and the expansion of access to improved social services. And to do so, we are prepared to take and make the tough decisions to make positive things happen for all the people of Angola. Mr. Speaker, the period ahead calls for responsible leadership that looks to the longer-term well-being of the economy rather than the expediency of political or social advantage. Dialogue is indeed essential in the process of democratic governance, but it must never deteriorate to the level of bullying and boisterousness. It is becoming apparent that in Angola today, the end game is more personal than national. But through it all, as this Angola United Front, and now as the government of Angola, we will continue to focus on the greater good. The people of Angola deserve no less, and we are confident that we are the government capable of delivering on this. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we have to define the times and not allow the times to define us. Let me end by thanking all of you in the gallery who have graced us with your presence today and have politely and patiently endured this rather lengthy presentation. May you all be blessed with a wonderful Christmas and a bright, healthy, and prosperous 2016 when it comes. Thank you all very much for listening. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. Member for Road South. Do we have a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
Thank you very much. The 2016 Appropriation Bill 2015 has been moved and seconded for a second reading. I will invite debate on the merits and principles of this bill tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock when we return. So that is it for the day, but I want to thank our audience, members in the gallery. I'm not going to say strangers, your members, your visitors. And I want to thank you for your patience and your behavior, well behaved. Thank you very much. So that's it for today, and I'll ask for somebody to move that we be adjourned.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, I raise a second motion.
Seconded by the member for Road South. That we be adjourned until tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, 10th of December, 2015. Thank you.